And welcome everybody to the Self-Liberation Project podcast. I am Nathan Hawken, and I have with me the always incredible, always amazing, ex-volleyballer, Olympian, humanitarian, philanthropist, and all-around just fantastic lady, Christy Mokatupu.
Thank you, Nathan. I don't know what to say after that. There's nothing more to say. Keep going.
Keep going. Say more.
No. Stop doing that.
Oh, man. So we had to take a little bit of a break over the last couple of weeks. I came down a bit sick, and Christy had a couple of things going on. What's been happening for you for the last couple of weeks there?
I'm just working to whip my teenager son into shape. It's full time now. I'm just invested in him, and he's doing normal teenager stuff that annoys most parents. And so I'm just working and helping him, keeping it real. Raising a teenager. And so even though I preach and speak at high schools and do a lot of public speaking in schools, there's nothing like doing it to your own child at home. So I'm very present to teenager issues because I'm working through some with my son right now. It's keeping me busy.
Sure.
What about you, Nate?
You'll have to give me some tips. I was going to say, you have to give me some tips for when my son is teenage years. So just put those in the bank and I'll come back to them later because I'm definitely going to need some help.
I heard that from many parents. They gave me so many tips over the years of what's coming, and now that it's actually here, I just went, oh, no. It's not all those tips go out the window.
Yeah. It's like you know it, you've heard it, you've got all the knowledge there, but like when it comes down to it, you got to trust your own gut, trust your own intuition, and do the best you can with whatever the situation is in front of you.
Yeah, and you know what? He's doing his best, I'm doing my best, and that's it. As a parent and as a teenager, you know, with the normal influences that we have around us, and our own personality types as well. So it's just a normal day in the office, I think, for parents and teenagers. I think that's what I'm going through, and so I'm just walking out the process.
Yeah, sure. That's all you can do, right? Just do your best. Trust yourself. Trust you make the right decisions. And it doesn't really matter so much what everyone else says because their situations are going to be different people, different personalities, right? But yeah.
I agree with that. And what about you, Nathan? What's been going on for you?
Look, not too much. Like I was sick. Like we all caught a tummy bug last weekend, which wasn't fun because it was one of those times where it was a 24-hour bug. Both myself and Amy got it at the same time. My son Aiden had it. My daughter Freya, she kind of skipped it, which was great, but she actually brought it home from school because I found out that a whole bunch of her school friends and the families there were all out of action. But it was really one of those times when Amy and I were just back and forth to the bathroom nonstop for that whole night, and we're trying to watch the kids at the same time because we can't get external help because we don't want to pass on the bug. So it wasn't fun. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't fun. I lost about half my body weight, which is starting to come back now. So, but it was a nice detox. Yeah, I've got to say, it was a nice detox. Yeah, so that wasn't fun. But apart from that, yesterday I went for a hike with my friend Franz, and we've got. Like so, just down here at south of Dublin, there's a beautiful mountain called the Sugarloaf, and it looks quite easy, but it's not. It's all uphill, and there's like a 450 meter like ascent up as well, and it's like literally you climb on all fours at times because it's so rocky and so hard. But it was really good. It was good to get to the top. I think I was pretty dehydrated because I wasn't feeling good by the time I got home, but it was really good to do it. And as I touched on, I think I spoke to you about it before. I'm starting to incorporate like coaching and hiking is something I want to do in the future. And so one of the things was quite funny because I was speaking to friends about it, and he said, you got to make sure that you're nice and fit once you start doing this because I don't want to be like halfway up a hill trying to coach someone like, I can't do this. Yeah, but it was good. It was good to get out. I haven't gone for a hike like that in a long time. It was nice.
Yeah, it's always good. I like that idea that you had around coaching and doing hikes together. I think that's powerful. Outdoors, coaching, getting your mind and spirit invested into conversation. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, 100%. Getting out in nature is very important for me, and I think it should be more important for a lot of people. I think getting away from distraction, getting in that environment, especially when it's like a challenging type of hike, like the one I went on yesterday, if someone can push through that while doing some internal work as well, I think it would be very powerful. So I'm just kind of touching on that and working on that now. So, but yeah, it was good. And the weather in Ireland at the moment is fantastic. It's like 25 degrees, which is just beautiful here.
Nice. Yeah, well, I'll be in Europe soon, so I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, yeah. Are you coming over across to Ireland at all?
I could. I mean, I don't know. I'm just going to Italy, but to see a girlfriend and then have some extra time there. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with my extra time, praying about it. But talking about nature, I mean, that's the whole point. I'm off social media for all of June for a month or two. And it's just for me to connect with my own self and my spirit, and to me to get filled and to go spend time with God and nature and myself, and maybe heal myself. Other parts I need healing, in other parts I don't know. Like I just go to do inner work and rest, because we all need rest.
Yeah. Yeah, fantastic. And so it's got to be done as well, especially getting off social media for a while. It's just too much technology. It's just takes a big toll on you.
It does. It really does. And so I really do every few months or 6 months take some time off social media. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. All right. Well, having said that, let's get into today's episode. And so what we're going to be talking about today is unshackling identity and navigating the maze of uncertainty for true liberation from labels. Because as we've still got the theme for this season, which is uncertainty, it'd be a good idea to talk about this, because we do a lot of self-identification. We do put a lot of labels upon ourselves, and ultimately that can lead to us preventing ourselves from doing either certain things, not fulfilling our potential, or whatever it may be. So I think this one's going to be a really good topic. Is there anything that you wanted to start off with at all?
Much there. I love this topic. I mean, most important thing I'm going to mention before you get started is just the liberation that comes from dropping labels and finding out more about ourselves. And so if people can become more liberated, if that's our intention for this, more liberated after listening to something today, that's always been a self-liberation project. That's always been our intention with this. So I really hope that someone gets some liberation today from watching this podcast and finding some tip or gem that helps them.
Yeah, me too. And I did come up with a couple of steps to help people navigate through this as well. But it is, the more you start to think about it and the more you talk about it, the more you realize that we put these labels upon ourselves. We identify in certain ways. And a lot of the time it's not actually coming from us, which we'll touch on before, but we'll touch on later. But the first thing I wanted to talk about was more like the fluid nature of self-identification, how it's not just one thing set in stone. Just because we've identified in a certain way or we've labeled ourselves or something in a certain way, it's actually quite a fluid process, and it can evolve with things like personal growth, like the shifting of values, even life transitions. Like that's quite an important one, because we do go through those times in our lives where it's a transition from one thing to another, or maybe it's a transition of thinking from one way to another. And then suddenly what we thought we were or how we saw ourselves, that changes in the process as well. So when we get into things like personal growth and evolving perspectives, this is something that I've noticed with my coaching clients. One of the things I really help them with the most is changing that perspective, changing how they see themselves, how they see the world, messing with their thinking so they can see things in a different way. And that really changes quite fluidly as you go through the process of developing yourself, as you go through these things in your life. And same with shifting of values as well. I mean, one thing I've thought about recently is, like, we've got a set of values, like priorities, things that are important to us in our deep unconscious levels, but they can shift over time as well when we start going through certain changes. I did a video yesterday, or on Saturday, sorry, where I was talking about that. Like, here I am now as a 40-year-old man compared to who I was my values shifted. My values changed a lot as I went through. And so these days my values are more focused on like the family, making sure that I'm setting ourselves up for the future, making sure I'm looking after my health and my own well-being. Where 20 years ago, it was the exact opposite. I was very much focused, my values more towards going out and partying, going out and just having weekends out, not looking after myself, not really caring too much about where that leads or anyone else around me. I was very much focused on that. It was quite selfishly as well. But then over the last 20 years, particularly the last 10 years, as I've kind of gone down that personal development path and started to learn more about myself and understand more about myself, my values have shifted. And it's been a very fluid process to go from where I was to where I am today.
Yeah, and when you talk about fluidity and moving at a different pace and evolving and shaping, I mean, that can be for some people very easy and calm, and for others it can be all over the place. I mean, for me it was all over the place. It was high, it was low. I mean, definitely going from family was always important to me, but God wasn't. And so when God came into my life and that shift as well, that was a big kind of shift in my life as well. And but you're right, it's got to be, rather than be so worried about trying to have a label on ourselves or trying to identify as something or have the answer all the time. We just have to trust the process and evolve and grow and keep continuing to be okay that what we are doing now might not be the same in the future. Because definitely back in my teens, I was just thinking the other day, gosh, if I still thought what I thought in my teenage years and my 20s, I'd be worried right now. And so it's definitely important, I believe, to keep, the labels are going to keep changing. Maybe some values and things will stay the same, but being able to roll with those movements and changes over time as you grow and evolve as a person.
Yeah. I think part of it is realizing that you don't need to label yourself. It's something that's happening right now. I think a good thing, I think I've said it to you before, it's things are neither good nor bad. They simply are. If you see the world through that perspective and things are just happening, they're not good or bad, then you actually have a lot more power in the situation. Like, you labeling something as good automatically means that you're also labeling something else as bad. And if you see things like, maybe I'm not making the best progress in my life, as a bad thing, it might be more difficult to get out of it because you see it as such a bad thing, you feel bad about it, right? Rather than just seeing it as something that it's just happening right now, and it is something I need to learn here, or something along those lines. I think that's a lot more powerful. And particularly when it comes to like a life transition, when something happens that forces us to change, we notice how we change as a result, like how our thinking changes as a result. Sometimes it can be through our own conscious choices of things are just so uncomfortable now, I have to change, or I'm forced to change, or we see a potential vision or something that we want and we start working towards it. Like, what, I want that so bad, I know I have to change. So you start taking those steps. Or something happens, a major life occurrence that forces you to adapt and change. Hence, like Amy and her leg, things that you've gone through as well. When we go through that, when it's forced upon us, we are forced to change, we are forced to adapt, and we are forced to grow. And it's always that wave. It's very fluid, moving very consistently.
Yeah, and something you said about, you just spoke about good and bad. I mean, I was going, gosh, as a Christian in the Christian world, I mean, sin, we look at sin, and you can look at sin and be like, yeah, exactly, this is sin, this is bad, this isn't sin. And it's so heavy because I do sin. I do things that don't honor God. And I've had to learn to embrace it or let it be, because I'm growing, evolving as a Christian. I'm learning, I'm understanding, rather than this is bad, this is good, and I'm a bad Christian, I'm a good Christian. And this whole bad, good thing, because we're sinful in nature, we're always going to sin. So it's kind of working. I've really had to understand embracing the both and being able to live like that. Otherwise, I'm going to constantly be in this self-condemnation, shame, guilt state all the time, because you're like, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that as a Christian. So I thought that was important to share right now too, that being able to embrace the good and bad as well is something that's helped me, and maybe someone else that's a Christian watching this will help them too, instead of being so high and low. It's just it's so tiring.
It's the additional pressure that we put upon ourselves because we are labeling ourselves as bad or whatever it may be. We're not reaching our full potential, so that puts that extra pressure on. But we also have to understand that it is a process. We have to learn certain things so we can get to that next level. And it is baby steps, like one step at a time. We have to learn this. We have to become more aware. We have to see this. But at the same time, we just can't label ourselves as someone who's bad or someone who sucks, who's not working. It's not happening, right? That's never going to work because it puts that additional pressure on ourselves. And I noticed that really comes a lot through like those social and cultural influences of self-identification as well, and labeling. I mean, if we just open up the door and look out in the world, it's riddled with labels getting put on everything and anything. It's really putting people in a certain box and identifying as one particular thing, which is supposed to encompass your whole life. But the way I see it, life doesn't happen like that. We've got so many different parts of ourselves. We're not just one or two things, but there is a lot of influence externally, even if it is not just from like the cultural things which are happening in the world, but the things which are happening more on a family and personal level, or even like at a religious level. Some people can really take on those labels quite strongly, which really prevents them from seeing other perspectives. It prevents them from understanding other people's points of view, and it can really put people in those boxes without any option to get out of it.
Yeah, and the reason why this is so important to understand for ourselves is because now I'm teaching my teenage son how to manage these things, and so in order for me to teach him, how am I showing that in my life? So he's watching me not just by what I'm saying, but how I manage myself. So I do share a lot of personal testimonies with my son, so that it's not as hard for him. I'm saying, look, this was hard, and I got the lesson, and this is what I believe now. It's maybe not be truth, but this is my lesson, and maybe that might help you with what you're going through right now. So I think, these are important topics to talk about to help our youth with mental health, and self-liberation, labels. I mean, all these topics we talk about are so relevant to teenagers and youth right now, what they're going through. So it's a very important topic.
Yeah, and this is something I think about a lot. It's the work that we do. When the people that need our help, when they come to us, they're willing, they're open for it. It's that blockage in a lot of other people who aren't open to it, particularly teenagers or other people. They're kind of not so much stuck, but they're focused on other things. And so they would ideally want to have, or want the need to listen to like advice, topics, lessons that you learned, things like that, to then want to change, because these type of things get so ingrained in people, particularly if it's coming from a very early age, like if it's a family belief, it's a structure around that, cultural identity, that gets really firmly ingrained in someone until the time comes where they either want to see the world in a different way or they realize it's not serving them anymore, right? And that's when they can start to self-identify in a different way or realize that they don't need to identify that anymore. As like you say, coming from a Christian background, there's some people that they say, I'm Christian and then that's it. Everything which is written here is how it has to be. There's nothing else out there. This is the only way. But there's no flexibility in that. And if there's no flexibility in that, then how rigid are they actually going to be? Like, what can they actually do that's going to serve them moving forward? And you see that quite a lot when it's out there in the world. I believe it's pretty rife. Yeah. I think outside of that, there's also the fear of judgment. One of the things I've noticed when people start labeling themselves or put labels upon other people or identifying in a certain way, there can be a big fear of judgment or resentment in that. Feeling like they're going to be judged if they think differently or if they put themselves out of their so-called label or their identification, because there can be a certain prejudice with that as well. It's like if they feel like they are something else or they want to be something else, but they've had a label on them their life for so long, then they could feel like, well, if I step out of that and start thinking in a different way, then I might be judged, so I'm not going to do anything. And so then with that, I believe that fear of judgment comes with a vulnerability or a lack in authenticity, because it means that you're not stepping out to be who you either want to become, who you feel like you should become, or feel like who you really are underneath it all. Because we're always putting up this front. I think the more awareness that we have, the more we can realize that we're labeling ourselves or that we're self-identifying in a certain way, the more that we can realize that we're not really fulfilling who we really are at our core. Maybe we're too afraid or we're too worried what people are going to think, that we don't actually start to explore who we are and realize that we don't need to label ourselves. And that comes with vulnerability. You need to be able to become vulnerable, allow yourself to be authentic. So whatever fears of judgment may be arising, they're just washing through you and they're not having an impact anymore, because it's not about what other people think about you, because they're going to think their own thoughts. They're going to judge no matter what. So even if you're afraid of it, it doesn't matter, because people are just going to judge. But you need to allow yourself to become vulnerable, to really connect with yourself and be authentic. So whatever fears that may be there, you can just rise above them and just be who you want to be. Step out. Don't have to label yourself. You just have to realize that you are who you are. And that's simply it.
Yeah, it's so beautiful to think of, the possibilities. Who could I possibly be if I didn't fear judgment? Who could I possibly be? What are the, like, that is space is so exciting. Like the possibilities if I let go of this, the possibilities that maybe my way of thinking is wrong. Maybe there's a blind spot. So when people are humble and courageous enough to ask themselves those questions, that's when things start coming their way and answers start coming their way. And one more story I shared. I mean, people come to me and tell me things that happen with them, like, oh, I don't get along with my son, I don't get along with my parent, my dad, this, my mum. And all I do is share testimonies of what I went through healing, relationships that I had that were broken or not healthy, and now how I've healed them and reconciled with them. And I've said to people are so angry in the relationship and in the whatever's happening. And all I say to him is, it's possible that you can forgive this person, and it's possible that you can reconcile with this person and have a healthy relationship again. But that possibility, like, you just let them know it's a possibility. You don't have to go through and do the work towards it, but it's a possibility. And I believe anything that anyone's going through, there's always a possibility for the greatest outcome you want. But it might take work. It might require you to drop pride or drop your own, you having to go up to someone. I mean, I just want people to know that there are so many possibilities out there for growth, for liberation, every single day. But it's whether we are courageous enough and humble enough to go in a direction that's uncomfortable, or maybe that we're wrong. We have to tell ourselves that we've been wrong, or just open our mind to something different that we're hearing, and then go towards that direction.
Yeah, because we get so stuck in our own thinking that we struggle to see those options, and it can usually take someone else bring it to our awareness. But at the same time, we also need to be receptive to that as well. I've seen a lot of people before, and I'm sure you've probably done it yourself. I know I have. I might be experiencing some type of problem, and then someone gives me a change in perspective, but I don't want to hear it, right? Because I'm so angry at the situation. I shouldn't say this, but my wife watches a lot of the like Real Housewives type of stuff on Bravo. I should say that because she'll kick my butt. But I sit there and watch that with her, because that's some of the times we just hang out together. But you see that level of just taking something that someone said and turning it into this drama and this fight. And it's just like, well, what's the point of all this, right? So many of them are just unwilling to let it go and just be, right? Because they're just missing that journey of self-discovery. They just get so hell-bent on their point of view, their way of seeing it, that they don't have any options. They don't see anything else. And even if they come to the point where like, all right, yeah, whatever, let's just drop it. That's just them not wanting to deal with it anymore, rather than actually just front up and face it. And that's the whole point of this. It's like, we all have options. And you said it beautifully. You've got the option to make this situation the best, amazing situation for you. But you have to make changes. You have to do something about it. And sometimes that's just either letting it go and forgiving the other person, like properly, not just saying drop it and walk away and just carrying this anger with you. But that could be the best option for you. And it's having the stones to actually step up and say, all right, this is what I have to do. Now I'm going to do it, because I don't need to be this person anymore. And this is you letting yourself go of a particular label or identification. And it could be, I'm angry, or I'm unforgiving, or even that person's a jerk, right? That's you labeling that person. It doesn't make them a jerk. They may have just done something that you didn't like. And being able to say, all right, I'm just going to figure out the best option and go with that, the best thing that works for me, and go with that. That takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of courage. I would go so far as to say that you've always got that there, but it's listening to that when it comes up. Because a lot of the time it's like we have the angel and the devil pop up on our shoulder every time we're trying to make a decision, right? And we know what the right thing to do is. But a lot of the time we just choose the opposite for whatever reason. It could be pride, it could be ego, all those type of things. But once you know it, like when the idea comes up, like it says, all right, you need to forgive this person, but you don't want to because of pride, ego, whatever it may be. But you know what the right thing to do is. And the number of times, like you said, that once you've made that right decision and you've done the right thing, it does put you at ease. It does bring you that level of peace. Because this whole thing, we're talking about labels, we're talking about self-identification. This is a journey of self-discovery, as is all the stuff that we talk about here and everything that we do, all my coaching, all the work that you're doing. It's a journey of self-discovery. The more we can discover about ourselves, the more we can push ourselves, not just in reaching levels of success, not just going to the gym when we don't want to go, but it's doing those things that we don't want to do to help us face the things inside us that we don't want to face. That's the courageous part, but that's the journey of self-discovery. That's what all this is about. It's exploring who you are. It's experimenting with different ways of thinking. It's opening yourself up to these things so you can actually get to a point where you're more willing and able to do it as well. And the more of this stuff that we can do, the stronger that we get as individuals, the more we realize ourselves, we realize what we're capable of. And it's very different to that pushing yourself and grinding yourself and working yourself into the ground to achieve money or status or whatever it may be. This is the inward journey. Like the journey out is always in. And the more we can journey in, the more we can face what we need to face, the more we can do the more positive steps to achieve those things that we want and just be free, be liberated. We can embrace ourselves rather than embrace everyone's version of what they either think we need to be, or rather than embracing what we believe we should be for everyone else.
Yeah, exactly. And, just learning to trust ourselves and trust our instincts and exactly, because there's so many different things coming at us every single day. I'm always getting offered opportunities, business opportunities, and people bringing stuff. And at the end of the day, you've got to trust your instinct and what's right for you, and go with that. But yeah, the influences, like what my son's going through now at school, with the pressures and influences and trying to fit in and trying to fit into something to be accepted. I mean, this is just a normal day in the office, and I think for myself still today, and then also for my son in his age group as well. And so learning to be true to yourself is one of the greatest things that you can do, but it definitely takes courage. And I think people actually, when they see that you are standing up for yourself and living your truth, even people that disagree with you can be very encouraged and inspired by your strength and tenacity and courage to stand firm, even though they completely disagree with you. People admire that courage and strength and confidence for convictions. Yeah. As long as it doesn't hurt anyone, generally people admire that. So it's a good lesson to take away as well.
Yeah, I agree. And it could be, you could admire it, and it could be hard to swallow at the same time, because you're like, oh, I wish I was like that, right? But we are. But we are all like that. We do have that inside us. We just have to realize that we're just kind of holding ourselves back in some way. It doesn't make anyone else better or worse. Doesn't make you and I better or worse. It just means that we've just learned enough things to get us to this point, and that's it, right? And we can't force it on anyone else. But I think that's really important. And I did come up with a couple of things to help people. So I know that a lot of people really struggle with this. And I've struggled with self-identification before, particularly labeling. These days, I feel like I'm way better at it, because I try not to label myself too much, but I also notice in my own thinking, so my self-talk, I notice sometimes if I don't do something correctly, that I'll say, oh, that's not right, or you're not doing it right, or you're no good, or whatever it may be. But I have to kind of catch myself with that. So I think a lot of people would really be struggling with that. So I thought I'd come up with a couple of things to help people with that. Did you have anything else you wanted to quickly mention? No? All right, cool. So for the first step to help you free yourself from labels is you got to reflect and you got to question. So we need to engage a little bit of introspection and self-reflection, like we touched on before. Because we have to understand what labels we're currently putting on ourselves and really examine those. Examine the identities that you're putting on yourself that you currently hold. And then we have to question them. As it is with everything, like we can't just take on board everything that we're told, even the stuff that we tell ourselves. We can't just take it on board blindly, because we know where that leads. It's almost like a tyranny within inside yourself. But we have to question the origins for whether or not they're valid, that whether or not these labels are justified, and considering whether if they truly reflect our authentic self. If the answer is no, that's when we start to have to think about changing them. But we really need to engage in that introspection, understand what labels we're putting on ourselves, and then question where they're coming from. Once we've actually taken the time to do that, then we need to embrace the fluidity and the authenticity of it all. So embrace the idea that self-identification is a fluid process, that it's always evolving. Realizing that just because you're putting labels upon yourself now, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be the labels that you have for the rest of your life. Because if you look back 10 or 20 years from your life, the labels that you had on you then, they can be very different to the ones that you hold now. So realize that they can and do change. And then allowing yourself the freedom to explore and express different aspects of your identity without feeling confined to the predefined labels. So allow yourself the freedom to at least explore and express something different. Like you said, give yourself options. Realize that you have the options there right in front of you, and you just have to make the choice to to take on something else, to see it in a different light. And then after that, we need to just prioritize authenticity by aligning your self-identification with your true values, your beliefs and aspirations. So this isn't a quick and easy task. This is some deep introspective work, because we need to understand, well, what are our values? What are our true values? What do we truly believe? What are our beliefs? What are our ambitions and aspirations? And then what we need to do is, once we've got those, we need to prioritize those above any other labels that we put upon ourselves and any other self-identification. And then after that, the next step is just to focus on your own personal growth and acceptance. Accept who you are now. Accept that you've put labels upon yourself. Accept that other people have put labels upon you. Accept that you're identifying in a certain way. But then realize that because they're fluid, if you start working on yourself, if you start going through a journey of personal growth, then you can navigate to a new self-identification. One that's more positive, one that's more empowering, one that really helps you. And then embrace the uncertainties and the complexities of the identity. It's very simple. You also have to embrace, like we've spoken about before, embracing the uncertainty of it all. Embracing that you don't know where it's going to end up. You've got a good idea, it's going to be more positive, but you don't know where it's going to end up in the end. But you have to embrace that, because that's also going to help you as well. So I think those steps would really help. Once again, it's not an easy process. It's not where it's just like, sit down for 5 minutes and sort this stuff out. No, there's a lot of work we need to do. But as long as we start taking those steps, then ultimately it's going to help and it's going to get you on a good path.
Amazing, Nathan, those steps. Because even for me, because we were talking about a lot of what you mentioned, but it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It really summarizes.
And I think the main thing that for me is just a question. One thing I've learned over the last 5 years or so, at the very least, is question really good.
It's just
question what you're told.
Listening to all this
question your thoughts, like the negative ones when they pop up. Embrace the more positive ones, because that's more of your truth coming through.
And it's just embracing.
But the more you can start to question,
from today is just
the better answers that you can get as well.
Everything.
So I think that's really important. So out of everything, you listeners, if there's anything that comes from it, question everything.
The highs and
lows.
So
with that, I think that's a good time to finish up. Christy, do you have any final thoughts?
Keep going. No, I love it. I'm going to agree on that. Question everything. Agreed.
We need to start getting some t-shirts done. Have some merch. I think question everything is going to be one of them.
It is very good quote there, right there. Yes.
Yeah. I was thinking like just one that says self-liberated. And that'll be like our little things that we can...
Yeah, we can start wearing shirts on the podcast, yeah.
Yeah. All right, that's it. Guys, we're going to be setting up a store. Make sure you buy your t-shirts when they're up and running. We'll sort that out. Hells yeah. All right, Christy, well, look, thank you very much. As always, it is an absolute pleasure having a chat with you. I love what comes out of these conversations. And if you people that are listening out there, if you need to get in contact with us, check the description below. We've got my email address there. You can find me on my Facebook group, Nathan Hawkins Serve Grow Experience. Christy, your email is down there. Is there any other way people can contact you, or are you happy with that?
Happy with that. ChristyMinistries.com. They can contact me through there.
All right, perfect. Awesome. Well, Christy, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you for the next episode.
Thanks, Nathan. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Bye.